It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the box. The LSU baseball offseason rages on. To say it is in full swing would be a complete understatement. And we have a lot to get to here today, and I am fired up to do so. There are 9 LSU Tigers in the transfer portal. We've talked about a few of them, but there are some that we haven't. So I want to give a thumbnail on each of the guys that we haven't. LSU has gained 2 commitments out of the transfer portal, 2 in 2 days, as a matter of fact. Pitcher Chandler Dorsey on Monday, slugger, infielder, catcher, we'll get into him, Luis Hernandez on Tuesday. Want to go through each of those guys because they could both contribute plenty to LSU in 2025. Jay Johnson had his end-of-season media availability on Tuesday. He talked a lot about roster building, the foundation for 2025, all those types of things, gave some updates on some injuries. So we'll get into what Jay had to say. Paul Mainieri is back in the SEC, accepting the head coaching job and officially being announced as the head coach at South Carolina. You know I have some thoughts on that. We'll get to that probably a little bit towards the end of the show. There is just a smorgasbord of things to talk about here on this edition of Musso at the Box. So let's get right into it. Y'all smash the like button if you have not already. Get subscribed to the YouTube channel on your favorite podcast app as well. If you have not already, follow me on social media. And here we go. Let's push off from the dock. So we'll start transfer portal. Then we will go into Jay's media availability, and then I'll finish with some thoughts on Paul Mainieri getting back into coaching, and not only getting back into coaching, but in the SEC and on LSU's schedule next year, as a matter of fact, too. With the transfer portal, I want to start with the departures we haven't talked about. And again, it'll just be a brief thumbnail kind of on each of them, and then we'll go in more in depth on the 2 guys coming in. I mean, what does everybody always say? Focus on the guys that are here, not the guys that are leaving. But in the case of some of these guys that have left, they're big names that everyone knows around here. So do definitely want to give some thoughts there. Let's kind of go back to the weekend, and that's when you first started to see some guys really populate back into the transfer portal. Nick Bronzini was a guy over the weekend who entered the transfer portal, played sparingly in his time at LSU, redshirted as a freshman in 2023. Lefty, who came in pretty highly touted. He was the number 2 left-handed pitcher out of California, state that produces plenty of talent, and he couldn't get on the field as a freshman. There weren't enough strikes or any of that, and he redshirts. You see him early in the year in 2024, 6 appearances, 4 2/3. This is not a surprise. Everyone we're going to speak about out of the transfer portal or into the transfer portal is not surprising for LSU, and that's really one of the good things about this. You haven't seen that one guy that's like, oh, man, wait a minute, what's he doing in there? So Nick Bronzini definitely falls into that category, and you wish him the best. I mean, it's a low 90s fastball, good breaking ball, a changeup to go with it. It just didn't pan out at LSU, and if it took him, it was that difficult for him to get on the field in his first 2 years, it was only going to be harder and harder as it went on. So he seeks greener pastures, and it makes a lot of sense. You wish that guy the best of luck. Zeb Ruddle enters the transfer portal officially, and Zeb's a really interesting guy, man. He's one that everybody always wanted to talk about, and Zeb Ruddle, in my opinion, is just at LSU at the wrong time. When Zeb came in, he, as a freshman in 2023, was the number 2 overall player in the state of Louisiana. So, I mean, highly touted enough. And each of his falls and subsequent, springs, in a sense, in those scrimmages, he always stood out and always set the world on fire and became kind of, I mean, I don't want to call him a camp darling, but in a sense, camp darling. Like he would shine so much there, but you'd look at the depth chart and be like, man, still, how's he going to get on the field? I mean, the first time I ever watched Zeb Ruddle swing a bat at LSU, he turned around a Skeens fastball at 98 in a fall inner squat and hit it like 3 rows from the top of the right field bleachers. And I was just like, okay, who's this guy? And he kept hitting and all of that, but you never, You look up at the depth chart and, okay, Dylan Cruz is in center field. All right, well, you have Josh Pearson and Paxton Kling, a highly touted freshman, is going to get some run out there. You looked and it's like, man, there's Gavin Dugas could potentially play outfield still at that point, right? Where is he going to be? Same thing happened here. And Paxton Kling's taking over, and Jake Brown's here, and Ashton Larson, and Josh Pearson. And that's why I just say when I look at Zeb Ruddle, the guy's got plenty of athleticism. He's shown plenty of ability in these inner squads. And even when you've seen him kind of get some ABs throughout the year in some, I guess, situations when the game's just kind of out of hand, late in the ball game, substitution, he has performed well. But again, when you look at what LSU would have returning here, Jake Brown's going to play center field. Ashton Larson was your leading hitter in conference play as a freshman and hit 300 for the year. Josh Pearson could go to the draft, but I think largely most people look at him and expect him back. There's just not a spot for Zeb Ruddle to break into the outfield, so he moves on, and you wish him a lot of luck. Because like I said, it's an interesting guy with a lot of athleticism and a nice blend of tools. So that one will be interesting, but it won't be at LSU, and you move forward there without him, and again, wish him plenty of luck. Then there's Cam Johnson, and this is the one that obviously is going to catch some headlines because Cam Johnson is the highest-ranked prospect to make it to campus in LSU history, and after 1 year, he's gone. And that is obviously a sign of the times. I think you see that much more in, like, football or basketball, but that can happen in baseball too. This is a guy that no one thought was going to make it to campus, passes on millions, does make it to campus, has an electric fall, like sets the world on fire in fall. We went through it throughout the preseason. He finished, top 5 in ERA, top 5 in opponents batting average against, strikeouts, all of that on this LSU staff, which was pretty good throughout the season. And when the lights came on, they were real bright. And he struggled early. He walked 6 guys in his first outing and could never really harness command, and that kept him off the field in conference play. Like, LSU gave him opportunity. The Arkansas series sticks out. They throw him in there with the bases loaded on the road in a tight game against Arkansas, and look, he allowed one of the inherited runners to score, but then got a huge strikeout, I believe, of Peyton Stovall. So, like, you saw moments. What you're missing out on, but again, I should say, that highly touted of a guy comes in, it starts off so great in the fall, struggles to get on the field, passed on a bunch of money, he's going to look elsewhere. He did. It's a bummer. Like, that one stings for the same reason, a guy like Aiden Moffitt stings. The ability, the sheer talent. This is a guy who in high school was up to 100 miles an hour with the fastball. You never quite saw that velocity at LSU, but you did see him pop 96 a few times from the left side, which is plenty good enough. I mean, the slider has the potential to just be deadly. Like, the potential there is huge. And for that reason, it stings losing Cam Johnson. Don't convince yourself that it doesn't. You look at the line for him this year, and yeah, it's a 12 ERA. It's only 9 innings and 13 appearances. 16 walks in those 9 innings. I get it. The ability, though, and the potential is why he's going to be highly sought after in the portal. And damn, you better hope he does not end up in the SEC. The last thing you want is to see him again when he puts it together, because he will. And Jay Johnson said it himself in the season when people were asking about him. You don't get that much talent you don't get more talent than him to campus. Highest ranked prospect to ever make it. Yeah, that stings. But he's out the door and you move forward. But yeah, that off of potential alone, that's a loss. And you'll see if he puts it together somewhere else. Again, you just hope that it's not in the SEC. Then on Tuesday, Paxton Kling and Sam Dutton entered the portal. Paxton Kling, I mean, everybody knows what it is, man. That guy, in high school at one point, was projected to be a first-round draft pick. No one thought he was going to make it to campus. He slips. He does. And goes in as a freshman. Is your opening day right fielder as a true freshman on a team that would eventually win the national championship and is hitting leadoff, by the way. Gets hurt after a slow start to SEC, and that kind of limited him the rest of the way. You had other guys emerge, and it really took a lot of his freshman season away. As a sophomore, he's trying to fill the shoes of Dylan Cruz. Again, spends a large majority of the season in the leadoff spot, and it never materialized for him, specifically at the plate. 118 games, 61 starts, hit .250 with 5 homers. He did have an on-base over 400 and fielded great at .993, but for Paxton Kling, it just didn't come together at this level of baseball. And for him, the smart thing to do now, we talked about Paxton Kling. He was a guy who had 3 options. He could return to LSU. He could enter the draft because he's a draft-eligible sophomore, but what would you really get there? Or he could transfer out. He chose to transfer out, and again, you wish that guy the best. I'll be very curious to see what level he lands at. The tools are such that you could see him get big-time interest, but I think the production on this level might lend him to going below a little bit to try and, in a draft year, really put up some big numbers and kind of show off the tools. He's a legit 5-tool guy. It just never materialized at LSU, and that's unfortunate, but that's a guy who's wildly talented, and you want the best, obviously, for him. And then Sam Dutton. This is, again, it's not a surprise. Sam has contributed plenty in his time at LSU. It's just been a bit of a roller coaster. It's a guy who has never really been able to find a role, which is odd because he pounds the strike zone. Like, it's the conversation we have about him all the time. And the stuff's plenty good enough. Like, fastball be 92, 93, 94, maybe a 95 in there every now and then. The slider, the change, like, it's a 3-pitch mix. 3 seasons, 57 appearances, 15 starts, but ultimately ended up being an ERA over 6. In 86 and 2/3 innings, though, just the 25 walks. Sam Dutton threw 66% strikes over the course of his career at LSU. That's elite, and that's why he kept getting opportunity. But the reason he could never really settle into a role, the quality of strike was always the question. He was in the zone, but occasionally he was too much in the zone. And the stuff isn't overpowering to where you could just get away with that. And you saw that a lot his sophomore year. You saw him really right that wrong early in 2024, and then late, the quality of strike waned a little bit, and the numbers kind of got out of whack. All in all, you look at those 86 innings, 110 hits. Like, that's a high batting average against. So a guy like Sam Dutton, I think he'd probably also follow a route similar to Paxton Kling and kind of go, the lower to maybe a non-power conference and see what he can do. But Sam Dutton contributed plenty for LSU and contributed to a national championship and threw a lot of strikes. It's just the consistency. It hampered him finding a solid role with this team. So you obviously wish Sam Dutton the best as well going forward. Now for the guys that LSU got in the transfer portal. Again, one Monday, one on Tuesday. Let's start on Monday, and that is ace relief pitcher Chandler Dorsey out of South Florida, the University of South Florida. And I'm fired up to talk about this guy, man. Had Tommy John surgery in high school, so he's 2 years removed from that. Just completed his sophomore year at South Florida. Will have 2 years of eligibility left, but obviously going into a draft year, can play a variety of different roles for LSU, and that's going to be something that's interesting to see which one the Tigers and Jay Johnson and Nate Yeskie peg him in for 2025, and if that changes any at all as well. So right-handed arm, 6'4", 222, big presence on the mound. Fastball is going to sit mid-90s, 95, 96. He can run it up to 97, 98. Got a really good slider as well, and he's working on a few more pitches that could bring, an opportunity as a starting pitcher for him. It's the same conversation we have about Griffin Herring all the time, right? Griffin Herring is a reliever. Starters get paid more than relievers. If he wants to improve his draft stock, coming back to LSU and being a starting pitcher is that path. Same thing here for a guy like Chandler Dorsey. Could he work his way into a starting role and potentially in a draft year create better opportunity for himself next July? that's something to look at. But like we said, the fastball's huge from the right side and is one reason he's such a good closer. Now, this is what I'm really excited about with when you look at Chandler Dorsey, because you can look at it and be like, he's coming from South Florida, non-power league. Will it translate into the SEC? So what I like to do is go see who he's pitched against. And coming from the state of Florida, there's no shortage of college baseball talent there. But it's not just Florida teams. UConn's pretty good. We all agree with that, right? I mean, they were just 2 wins away from Omaha and gave Florida State everything they wanted. He threw 2 shutout innings against UConn this past season, and didn't give up a hit. All right, well, that stands out. Indiana State, they're pretty good. We agree with that too, right? I mean, hosting bubble team. Did host in 2023. Been a good run for the Sycamores. It will shut out. Actually, I'll do one better. Perfect inning against Indiana State earlier. Florida State, they're in Omaha. Perfect inning against Florida State on just 8 pitches, mind you. UCF, that was a tournament team. 2 shutout appearances against UCF. Tulane, tournament team. 3 1/3 shutout, no-hit innings, 3 strikeouts, no walks. It's pretty good. East Carolina, they hosted. Shutout inning, no hits against them as well. Florida was only called on for an out, but he got that out. Florida's in Omaha. They're pretty good. Oh, by the way, the team last year that Florida had who played for the national championship and lost to LSU, that's who Chandler Dorsey got his first collegiate win against. This guy's been through the battles, even coming from a school like South Florida, just because the college baseball is so great there. And when you look at the numbers he put up last season as the closer, you're looking at 8 saves, a 2-1 record, an ERA of 3.6, 41 strikeouts in 30 innings. He was dominant. This is a guy who is the best reliever on a Division I team, and you've snagged him. And he's got even higher upside to where he could mold into a starting pitcher for you. But at worst, he's a key cog at the back end of your bullpen and fills a big need for LSU. What was one of their biggest problems early in the conference slate when they were going 3-12? They couldn't finish games. Chandler Dorsey can help LSU finish games. So I'm fired up for that addition. That is a massive, massive get for LSU, and I can't wait to see what he does in the purple and gold. Just huge, huge, huge get for LSU in Chandler Dorsey. What a way to start the portal additions. Tuesday comes, and when we did our roster outlook after the season ended, we looked at transfer portal needs and looked at the biggest ones. Infield was one of them. Power bat was one of them. LSU might have just checked both of those boxes on Tuesday. And I say might have because Indiana State slugger Luis Hernandez commits to LSU out of the portal, but he has a caveat to him. Put a little asterisk. He is draft eligible, and he will be a draft risk. LSU will have to get him here. They'll have to get him through July. If they do, they're getting a very versatile player that has played catcher and first base and has even served as a designated hitter as a sophomore, a career 315 hitter, but is coming off a season at Indiana State as a junior where he hit 359 with 23 home runs and 76 RBI, a 1114 OPS. Massive numbers on a really good team that almost hosted and went fourth. And I understand you can look at it and go, man, it's the Missouri Valley Conference. Is it going to translate? That's the question you're going to have a lot. It certainly could. It certainly could not. But when I look at this guy and I see him as the draft risk that he is, that lends me to believe that it should transfer over. LSU isn't done here. There will be more when it comes to first base, catcher, power, because you need that. Like, Tommy White, gone. Jared Jones, likely gone. We've been through that with Jones. There's just not much more he can really do, I don't believe, to improve his stock at LSU. The guy is a career 304 hitter. He has hit double-digit homers both years, including 28 as a sophomore. He fielded 991 career at first base. It's pretty darn good. Like that, he had a whale of a regional where he really showed the improvements he's made in pitch recognition at the plate and all those things. He's likely gone. This is a guy, Luis Hernandez, who could fill multiple roles for LSU if they get him here. Whether it's first base, filling in for Jones, whether it's designated hitter, replacing Travinsky, definitely the power with the 23 home runs in 2024, 32 for his career, and he can even catch a little bit. And catcher's an interesting spot. We've talked plenty about the potential of Brady Neal entering the transfer portal. I think right now that's leaning a little bit more towards Brady Neal coming back. I think things can always change. But it seems like Jay Johnson had a really good meeting with Brady Neal in the exit meetings. And Jay, when he met with the media on Tuesday, casually slipped it in when he was talking about the foundation, and he mentioned Brady Neal by name. That feels like a pretty good sign, but who knows? Brady was definitely rumored a portal risk, so we'll see. But Blaze Priester, who you have coming in from junior college, could go to the draft, and your catcher in your high school class could also absolutely go to the draft. So you look at a guy like Luis Hernandez, he fills multiple needs. The problem is, like we said, he is also draft eligible and a draft risk, and you have to get him here. And people have asked, why would a guy eligible for the draft transfer to another school? It's a simple answer. The same reason top-level high school prospects who are draft risks signed with a school. You need a fallback plan. Guys have their number. If they don't get that number, they go to school. Or if they get hurt, they go to school. It's the same thing here. And LSU takes those guys for the reason of, okay, they're really good. By the chance they get to campus, you'll want to sign them. Same thing we go through every year with the high school. It's the same thing in the portal. This is a guy who has done plenty at Indiana State to warrant getting drafted, but is it going to be as high as he wants? Okay, if it's not, let me enter the transfer portal and go to a power program and show it on a bigger stage to improve draft stock. That's potentially what you're looking at. Now, he would lose his leverage, obviously, if he does come to LSU, but that's why players do that. And LSU has been victimized by this recently. Like, think back to 2022. LSU signed 2 infielders, lost both of them in the draft, out of the portal. Carter Young for Vanderbilt, he got drafted. Jack Pineda from Baylor got drafted. And both of them went. So, like, we've seen this, and this is where you're at with Luis Hernandez. But if you get him here, that's a really big get. And it shows you, I mean, how forward they are going through this portal cycle right now. How aggressive, how assertive LSU is. That's a big need. And that's a guy who fills it all. That's going to be a big one to watch. So adding to the list of all the guys that we're watching in the draft this July, there's plenty of them with LSU ties, both on the current team, in the high school recruiting class, and now out of the transfer portal with Luis Hernandez. But huge get who fills multiple needs, versatile, power bat. Look, I'm not a scout. I'm not ever going to, claim to be one, but when you just look at him from the right side, it's a really compact swing. The barrel stays in the zone a long time, which allows him to hit for that high average and obviously drive the ball out of the ballpark. So definitely a prospect you would like to get. We'll see if LSU can finish that off or how his draft process goes in July. All right, so that catches you up on the transfer portal. Let's revisit a little bit of what Jay Johnson said when he met with the media on Tuesday to kind of close out the regular season. And we'll start with the draft. So Jay talked about the potential draft turnover that LSU had. And you'll remember when we went through it, I think we identified 16 players who were draft eligible on LSU's team. And throughout the caveat that some of them are going, others have decisions to make, some of them will enter the transfer portal. A guy like Sam Dutton was draft eligible. He entered the transfer portal. Paxton Kling, same thing, entered the transfer portal. And then there's, Pearson, Braswell, Lure, guys with decisions to make, Jones, Herring, and then there's Holman, Jump, Hurd, White, who are gone. So Jay Johnson talked about the potential turnover and how it will impact the 2025 roster.
We need to obviously go get some players, having 13 players drafted last year. I think we'll have, could be 5, as few as 5, and it could be as many as 11 probably off of this roster. That's a lot of turnover, over a 2-year period from LSU to professional baseball. And I'm really proud of that. And that's what we're also here to do, is develop guys for professional baseball. Nobody does that better. So it's kind of led to a hustle, I guess you would say, of what we need to do to put our 2025 roster where it needs to be. It will look different by design, and I'm very excited about that.
Him saying it'll look different by design is interesting to me, but that speaks to, look, it wasn't going the way they wanted. They were very deep. They were very talented. They came together and made a great run, but ultimately that season wasn't up to the standard at LSU. And we all understand that. They understand that, and they're doing something about it. I think when he says it'll look different by design, I think that means a couple of different things. I think, number one, it means, okay, we had guys here that it wasn't totally working. They couldn't carve out roles, which is a lot of the guys that we talked about who have entered the transfer portal, and change is needed in that case because you have to win. Like, you want to get all these guys on the field. You want to keep everybody happy. But what's most important is winning. Jay Johnson mentioned right there the amount of players going to the draft and how that is part of what they do here, and it's a very important part, and he's very proud of that, and he should be. However, that will never save Jay Johnson's job. And don't misunderstand me. Jay Johnson is in no way on the hot seat, nor should he be. The guy has won 40, 54, and 43 games and a national championship in 3 seasons. But what I'm saying is, when you do look at the season they just had, and it's okay, it wasn't up to the standard, and they're able to acknowledge that, you have to right that wrong. If you don't, no one's going to look at it and say, yeah, but they put all these guys in the major leagues. No, it's going to be, what did you win? So you have to win. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. And they're doing that in guys moving on and who they're taking out of the portal and things of that nature. That's not the only thing I think he meant by that, though. When he said it's going to look different and that's by design, I think he's also talking about the way they're building the roster now. And I say that because he talked plenty about how college athletics have changed and how that's dictating a change in the way you build a team and a program.
This team we just had was a very deep roster. At the end of the day, you can only have 9 guys in the lineup at one time. For the SEC, I actually play a lot of players. You know what I mean? We actually pitch a lot of guys and try to do that with development, win now, obviously, and then development in mind. And the reality is we're in a different landscape right now. I don't think it's about building program anymore. That's like my wheelhouse. My specialty is developing a program. But I think it's probably now about building your team 1 year at a time. So we have to adjust. We have to adapt, improvise, and overcome that.
So when I first heard that, I didn't like it. Like, when I first heard Jay Johnson say, I don't think it's about program building anymore, which he says is his wheelhouse. You have to do this 1 year at a time. I didn't like it. Because when you hear that, you immediately just think, all right, man, they're going to dominate in the transfer portal, and you're just going to be looking at a new team each year, and it's going to be guys in and out and free agency and all those things that everybody hates about the transfer portal and NIL that everyone complains about, and we still all watch sports anyway. But I'm saying what? I didn't like hearing that because I don't think that that's a sustainable model. And it's not. First of all, you need a lot of resources to actually be able to do that. And that includes NIL. It's just, you need a lot of resources to do something like that. But the more I think about it, and the more you listen to Jay, and I'm about to play another cut where he kind of elaborates a little bit more, the more I can understand what he means when he says build it 1 year at a time. So this was more from Jay Johnson elaborating kind of on roster construction, program building, 1 year, all of that. Give a listen.
We need more than we've needed. I mean, that's just the way that it is, you know, but the solutions aren't always from the outside. The solutions are DJ Primo, you know what I mean, who on a different staff probably would have got more opportunities. We had a good pitching staff. I mean, somebody said this to me, like, we had better numbers this year without the best pitcher on the planet that we had last year. But it maybe made some guys a little harder to get in there than they'd like. Cade Anderson, like, could have started Cade Anderson the whole time. We did start him on Tuesdays. So Chase Shores, Cade Anderson, the position player group improving, like, that's a lot of the solution. Now, to compete for a national title, you got to have more than that, because if you can't match up in our league, it is what it is. Like, I mean, we've seen it. Part of matching up is the improvement of the players on your team, and we are well positioned for a lot of improvement from guys from this year to next year because of what they got to do this year. And then we need some help around them, and we're going to go get it.
This is what I take from that is obviously at the very end. And when I look at this and I say, okay, you build it 1 year at a time. It isn't necessarily, hey, let's go pillage the transfer portal every year and throw a new team out there. The team will look different every year now, but not just because LSU is building the team out of the portal, which, again, I think is what your mind can immediately go to when you hear that first answer that he gave. The way he started that one, the solutions aren't always from the outside. Sometimes the solution is DJ Primo, Cade Anderson, Paxton Kling into the transfer portal. Jake Brown's your solution there in center field. Okay, Jake Brown played a lot as a freshman. That's a guy that you can actually have in the program and develop, and he can be a program guy from Louisiana. But you need more, so you go get Luis Hernandez. DJ Primo, Cade Anderson can be an answer, but you need more, so you go get Chandler Dorsey. Guys who can come in for 1 year, contribute, and elevate the team, while you still have Ashton Larson developing and being part of the solution. Stephen Milam developing and being part of the solution. Maybe a guy like Brady Neal developing and being a part of the solution. While you still have that, but your team obviously looks different because everyone thought, man, Paxton Kling is going to be the next great guy. And I'm not picking on Paxton Kling. We're using Paxton Kling as an example. But instead, it's Jake Brown. And you're going to have guys who you think can take that next step that maybe don't. And after the 2025 season, they seek a new opportunity. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that it will look different year in and year out. When you really think about it, it always has. And I think with some of the guys that you have, you can still build the program and elevate the program and develop guys like Anderson, Primo, that he used as an example, Brown, Milam, Larson. I mean, we go on and on. Ryan Kucherak, people like that. But where you're going to have to find those guys, you're going to have freshmen immediately come and contribute, like Milam, Brown, and Larson were able to do. Because the other side of that coin is getting Cam Johnson to campus, him not contributing enough, and then him leaving. So it will look different, but it won't and it'll look different year to year, but it won't just be because LSU's living in the transfer portal. It will be because the transfer portal impacts you both ways, where guys didn't necessarily reach the heights they wanted, so they're going to go look somewhere else, and you need to find someone to replace them. And LSU, with the influx of talent that they bring in out of high school, with the influx of talent that they bring in out of the transfer portal, they are in a position to do that in two different ways, both from within and both from the outside, but both of those contribute to a brand new looking team each year. One more from Jay Johnson. This was the update on Chase Shores, and it is extremely positive.
He's rolling pretty good. Was throwing a live bullpen the other day, in a rehab thing, and was up to 97.7 miles an hour, and we're 14 months or 13 and a half months off of surgery. Sliders really improved. Him and Coach Yeski have been doing great work on that. You feel great about that.
You feel great about that. That's a great update. The fastball velocity's there. He's got a little bit more in the tank there, obviously, but to be there and be able to improve the slider and all of that at 13 and a half months is great. We talk about it often with Tommy John. Each guy recovers differently. Obviously, everybody's body is different, but the rule of thumb is 18 months. You are, free, like restriction free. The leash is off. You're full go, and he's still got time to work up to that. But to be where he is at 13 and a half, 14 months is incredibly encouraging for Chase Shores. He should be absolutely full bore, ready to go opening day for LSU. Everyone expects him to be your Friday night guy, or at least in the rotation. Look, I think that's a great expectation. He's absolutely going to get that shot. He deserves that shot from stuff alone. But keep in mind, not everybody can just step in and go in the weekend rotation. It's just not always how it works. And keep in mind, even though he hits that 18 months and he's full go, there's no restrictions. He, leash is off. He's ready to go. It still might take him a while because he hasn't pitched in a long time. Think about Thatcher Hurd in his year in 2023 coming off. At the end, he was ready to go. Gage Jump, second half of SEC play in 2024 was awesome and ready to go. It might take some time, but that's an incredibly encouraging report on Chase Shores. You should all be fired up to have him back and ready to go. That guy has no business being on a college campus, and you're going to be able to just kind of turn him loose because the risk of re-injury is very, very low, which is great. So incredibly positive update there on Chase Shores from Jay Johnson on Tuesday. All right, last order of business, P-Money. Paul Mainieri, he is back in college baseball, back in the SEC, accepts the head coaching job at South Carolina. I think a lot of people are surprised by this move. Here's what I'll say about that portion of it. I'm not surprised that Paul Mainieri wanted to get back into coaching. I'm not surprised that Paul Mainieri was being considered by South Carolina. I'm a bit surprised that South Carolina made him their head coach. But if you've been paying attention, the last two hiring cycles, every hiring cycle since Paul Mainieri retired from LSU, he interviewed for jobs. Notre Dame in 2022, Miami in 2023, South Carolina in 24, and ultimately got that job. Why I am a little surprised is because it's just not the direction I thought South Carolina would go. Paul Mainieri is a great baseball coach. Paul Mainieri is still a great baseball coach. I'm certain of that. Paul Mainieri did not forget how to win baseball games, how to coach and win baseball. That didn't happen. The guy's the active wins leader now in college baseball with over 1,500. He's got a national championship. He's been to Omaha 6 times. His teams at LSU were a top 8 national seed 7 consecutive years. He won 4 SEC championships. That doesn't just leave you. He knows how to coach. He knows how to win. He will do that at South Carolina. Where it was interesting to me and where I was surprised that they went that route is Paul Mainieri is 66 years old currently. He will be 67 by the time next season rolls around. How much can you really get out of him there? The game has obviously changed. The transfer portal, NIL. Yes, the transfer portal was instituted in 2018. Paul Mainieri had that the last few years he was at LSU, but nowhere near the level that it is now, and he didn't have to deal with NIL. South Carolina as a program isn't necessarily where they were. I don't even really need the necessarily qualifier. South Carolina as a program is not where they were under Ray Tanner. South Carolina has not been to Omaha since 2012, more than a decade. And even when they did advance to super regionals, like in 2023, they were kind of falling off there. That was the thing about Mark Kingston's team. So whether it was from injuries or whatnot, they faded at the end of the season. and that hampered them having major postseason success. Paul Mainieri can bring you that. What I'm most interested in, because like I said, the guy's going to win. He's won everywhere. And he hadn't forgotten how to do that. He's going to win games. Can he actually elevate the level at which South Carolina is already winning? And that's what I'm unsure of. I don't expect Paul Mainieri to go to South Carolina and win another national championship. I just don't. It's hard to ask. I mean, that we all deal with that so much at LSU that's just the expectation that you come here and win a national championship. That is an unrealistic expectation at most places. Okay? It just is. When you look at South Carolina, when they haven't been to Omaha in over a decade, yes, they've won 2 national titles, but they've fallen behind in facilities a little bit. Their budget is not what it used to be, and it's not to the level of other teams in this league. Will that hamper Paul Mainieri and his staff in NIL and recruiting and all of that? All of those are questions. So that's the big thing. Can Paul Mainieri actually go there and win in a way that elevates the South Carolina program back to its heyday? I'm not sure of that. But if there's a guy that potentially could, sure. Yeah. He's got the experience. He's a proven winner. He's a name, all of those things. They've already shown investment. Paul Mainieri is going to make $1.3 million annually over 5 years at South Carolina. Mark Kingston was making $725K. So there's your investment right there. All right, let's see what he can go do. I'm not going to predict he elevates them back to their heyday because I think South Carolina is probably just a middle-of-the-road program in the SEC now. Like the majority of their sports are, if we're just being honest. But Paul will get his chance, and I'm happy for him. Like, extremely happy for Coach Mainieri to be able to get back into the game that he loves. He obviously wasn't, ready to hang it up. It was just between the health issues and where LSU was, it was time for a change. And it was done amicably, and it was done properly, and he got a great send-off from a university that he was a great ambassador for and will continue to be. So, all good there. Extremely happy for him to get this opportunity. But it's a tough job. It's a tough job because while South Carolina probably is just a middle-of-the-pack program now, the expectation is far from that in Columbia. Of that, we're sure. They just blew out Mark Kingston, who they were only paying $725K, who took them to 4 NCAA tournaments in 6 years and 2 super regional appearances. They want more. Paul Mainieri is going to be tasked with that. The Terry Rooney piece is the other part of this. Terry Rooney will leave LSU, where he was the associate director of recruiting, associate director of player development and recruiting under Jay Johnson. Just 1 year back in Baton Rouge. Of course, plenty of ties with Paul Mainieri. Was on Mainieri's first staff at LSU for 07, 08. Left to take the Central Florida job, and then came back this year. Look, is that a loss for LSU? Sure. Rooney's a great recruiter. He has a lot of baseball wisdom to impart in a lot of different areas of the game as well. He's a great coach, all of those things. Yes, it's a loss, but LSU will be just fine. I mean, Terry Rooney left LSU in 2008 to go be the head coach of Central Florida. LSU won 2 national championships, played for another, was a national seed 7 straight times, won 4 SEC titles. Like all of that in the time before he came back. LSU will be fine. But yes, it's a loss. It's also a big gain for South Carolina. Hey, LSU goes to Columbia in 2025. So we'll talk plenty about this. But those are my thoughts. In a nutshell, happy for Coach Mainieri to have this opportunity again, do something that he loves. He will win because he's a winner, and he's won everywhere he goes. It's not debatable. Will he win to the level that South Carolina wants him to elevate them back to when they were going to Omaha 3 straight years and winning back-to-back national championships? That's a tough ask. That is a very, very tough ask for Coach Mainieri. I guess the last thing on the way out, Ethan Petrie's not going anywhere. That he's just not. He tweeted that out Tuesday, that he was committed to stay at South Carolina. When they retain Monty Lee, that's going to really keep the bulk of that South Carolina roster together. So that will put that to bed as well. All right. Whew. That was a lot of offseason news to cram in there, guys. It was a lot of fun, though, and we'll be back when there's more, and there should be more in the coming days and weeks. So stay tuned. Keep it locked to Musso at the Box. Smash the like button. Get subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app, and be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.